Welcome again, everyone, to our latest Lunch and Learn. Hope everybody's got food and is enjoying that. For those who don't know by any chance, or anybody watching online, my name is Kelly McDaniels, and I am the director of our Heritage Center. Before we get started with our presentation today, I have a special announcement because today is very important as it is Sister Amrita's birthday. So if we could all sing her happy birthday really quick. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Sister Amrita. Happy birthday to you. I'm sure there are many in India wishing that Sister Amrita was there to celebrate with them, but we are very delighted to have her here with us this year. So if everybody's settled, I'll give one last notice to open those bags of chips if you haven't already. And we will get started. As you saw a minute ago, we're going over the history of the water supply today. You've heard me rant about this before. It's one of my favorite research topics here. So if I get excited, talk too fast, carry on for the rest of the day, let me know, stop me. So up at the top of this slide, we have a quote from Bishop David. "A beautiful, inexhaustible spring will give them an abundance." When the Sisters of Charity of Nazareth first moved to this property in June 1822, two springs, one under the present-day church and one to the east of the cemetery, supplied the sisters and their students with water. In 1831, the sisters paid $15 to have a foundation laid for a spring house over the church spring. And you can see that spring house right up there. Got a fancy laser pointer right now. We're going nuts today. Wait till you see the rave attachment. I'm not even joking. You can't make that up. Cisterns and wells were added over the years as the need for water grew with the increasing numbers of the congregation and Nazareth Academy. In 1867, the old Serpentine Road, which led to the train depot, was replaced with a straight turnpike. In the process of building this new road, a retaining wall was constructed forming a pond, which was fed by a spring located across the road in Westcott Field. Over the years, the pond has been known by many names, including the Lily Pond, the Depot Pond, the Station Pond, the Railroad Pond, and Peter's Puddle. Originally, that Serpentine Road and what is now today a straight turnpike with that curve at the end alongside the railroad tracks was Nazareth's entrance. The road that goes out to Bardstown Road was added much later. You can see up there the retaining wall. The water was pretty low when this photo was taken. And then we have a lovely Nazareth Academy girl standing there in front of Peter's Puddle. The year 1889 witnessed a major advancement for the Nazareth campus. Work began in October on a boiler house and steam apparatus for the use of steam heat at Nazareth. In 1890, steam heat was used for the first time in the Academy and Mother House. Steam was more efficient than the traditional fire and coal methods, fireplaces and coal-burning stoves, I should say, and also much safer. The sisters and students were naturally delighted in having warmer buildings during the cold winter months, and it was especially welcome for those sisters living in the infirmary. On the images behind me, I will point out boilers up here. Those are the boilers, and then you can see the big coal house in the back that was for keeping a stock of coal handy to keep those boilers running. This right here, if you can see the kitchen and the bakery, so the infirmary is up here, which is relatively where Carrico is now. Good question. This is one of my favorite slides. Hose houses and hand grenades. In the late 1800s, hose houses were built around campus to protect the water hoses that were stored on reels from the elements, the snow, the rain, the wind, the sun. The hoses were, of course, for use in suppressing any potential fires. You can see those where these red arrows and now my laser pointer are pointing. They had a few of them around campus. Another fire protection feature of the time was the hand grenade, which seems contradictory, but I'll explain. Hand grenades were essentially an early version of a fire extinguisher. They were glass containers designed to be thrown at a fire, and upon impact, they would shatter, releasing a chemical compound designed to extinguish fires. I haven't done a ton of research on those, so I don't know how effective they were, but better than nothing, presumably. In an effort to increase the water storage capacity on campus, a contract was secured on May 26, 1899, with Falls City Artificial Stone Company for the building of a reservoir. This above-ground reservoir once stood near the water tower in Peters Puddle. The round, above-ground concrete reservoir stood several feet tall and was approximately 75 feet in diameter. Up here you can see this is the avenue leading to the reservoir, and I have the reservoir on blueprints. However, despite the reservoir not being demolished until the mid-1970s, sometime between 72 and 74, when I was researching this project, absolutely nobody that I talked to remembered a thing about it, and no record of it being demolished was ever preserved in the archives. This led to a certain archivist temporarily losing her mind in the quest for evidence, but I found it. Technically, I believe it was either Terry or Jerry that found it in a photograph from 1951. This dark shadow here, right by the water tower, that is our mystery reservoir. I only went a little insane. I thought I had just about pieced a timeline together when Mother Alphonsa threw a wrench in my notes. Sister Mary Dolores Macklin's 1883 reminiscences of Nazareth and a letter written by Mother Helena Tormey during a drought in 1892 both stated that there were no lakes on the property. The only body of water mentioned was the pond, Peters Puddle. However, in a letter dated April 16, 1905, Mother Alphonsa mentions that a sister walked out to the new lake. As I read that, I said, "What lake? Wait a minute, Mother Alphonsa, when did we get a lake?" This lake. That's the one she was talking about. Apparently, sometime before April 16, 1905, Mother Alphonsa oversaw work to construct a new lake. She oversaw the work from 1904 to 1906 to build the new mother house, and evidence indicates that the lake was built circa 1904 in response to the additional demand for water based on modern plumbing being installed in the new mother house, along with the already increased demands because of the steam heat. The lack of records surrounding construction of the earthen dam that this lake was first built with, and the fact that we have no payment records, suggests that it was constructed by Nazareth employees. A concrete dam designed by D.X. Murphy replaced the earthen dam in 1911. Originally, this lake was referred to as Nazareth Lake or simply the lake because they only had the one. It later gained other monikers, including the Old Lake, Lower St. Joseph Lake, and the unflattering Mud Lake, due to its tendency to regularly fill with silt and require expensive cleaning. If you look at this picture up here, this is the backside of campus. So there's the infirmary. This is where the volunteer house stands roughly today. You've got O'Connell Hall. So that is where that lake is located. And then we just have some fun photos of sisters and students out by the lake. Yes? Mm-hmm. I'll show a big overhead in a little bit. By 1909, Nazareth's water supply included Nazareth Lake, Peter's Puddle, the reservoir, the first water tower, springs and a spring house, hose houses, steam heat, and several wells and cisterns. Up on the screen is what's called a Sanborn fire map. They were used for insurance as they detailed water sources on a property and also showed where the different buildings were. These actually hang outside of Truett's office today, so if you want to take a peek at those, unless you moved them. Rather than having to visit every property individually, insurance agencies would look at the Sanborn maps and then make a decision on whether or not to underwrite a property. Today, they are a great resource for historians on the layout of cities, towns, and one convent/college and academy campus. This Sanborn fire map shows us that by 1909, we have all of those features that I just listed and the associated boiler system and network of pipes. The 50,000-gallon water tank that I mentioned was built in 1908. And prior to the addition of the water tower, running water was provided to O'Connell Hall via tanks located in the attic, which were fed from a well behind O'Connell Hall via a force pump. The water tower replaced those old tanks in the attic, which were in disrepair and leaking. And if you can imagine today, if we had leaking water tanks in the attic of O'Connell Hall, what a mess that would make. You can see up here, these are little cisterns, all these little blue bits. And then we've got the boilers for the steam, and it shows they're not this close. You can see those little breaks in the line show a distance, but there's our water tower, our reservoir, that's representing Peter's Puddle, and out here, Nazareth Lake. And for reference to the buildings, you have the mother house and infirmary and the church here. In 1911, D.X. Murphy designed both a sewage disposal system and a water supply and purification plant for Nazareth. This is the same year he added that concrete dam to the Nazareth Lake. The sewage disposal system and the purification plant both improved the quality of the water supply across campus and brought sanitation methods up to modern standards. The original sewage disposal plant was replaced in 1962. Nazareth connected to the Bardstown Water Company system in 1978 and the Bardstown City Sewer System in 1981. Very late, yes. I hear some wows around the room. No, it was not very long ago at all. The sewage plant was demolished in 1992, but I'm told you can still see the ruins of the foundation down there by the creek. The water purification plant, also known as the filter house, was upgraded and renovated multiple times over the years and still stands on campus today. Up on the screen, we've got some modern day photos of the filter house, and then this is from the plans that D.X. Murphy made for the sewage treatment, and you can see that 1911 date. As the population on campus grew and water was used for more and more things, cooking, cleaning, laundry, bathroom facilities, and steam heat, periods without rain became a greater and greater threat. Over the years, Nazareth experienced several droughts. These were met with individual prayers, novenas, and masses, all offered for rain. Restrictions were put in place on the amount of water individuals could use. Bathing in tubs was prohibited. And during a severe drought in 1918, the SCNs contracted with Mr. J.B. Beam, the owner of a nearby distillery you might have heard of, to lay pipes from Nazareth to a lake on his property and thus alleviate some of the sufferings that Nazareth brought on by the drought. At other times, sisters received tank cars full of water from Louisville via the railway, or they contracted with other neighbors for access to water on their properties. Money and land were both exchanged at different times for access to water. The excerpt from the annals on the screen talks about a drought in 1930 when the sisters brainstormed different ways to restore water to campus. It starts at the top. The water situation is critical. Today, Mr. W.O. Stiles called to offer the pond on his property, but when he went to look at it, he discovered that the amount of water left was not sufficient to justify our going to the expense of piping it. Sisters Mary Stephen and Bertrand, that's Mother Bertrand, went to Bardstown to consult Mr. Newman about the possibility of drilling. He did not give much encouragement because of the nature of stone and sandy soil in this neighborhood. Later, Father J.D. Gettelfinger of Flaherty, Kentucky, and Reverend F. Joseph Gettelfinger of Hickman, Kentucky called. They have both done extensive drilling and were at St. Mary's College, Kentucky when they heard of our plight. They came to Nazareth to see if they could offer any assistance. They strongly recommend drilling, even to the depth of 550 feet. They seemed confident that we will find water. These additional excerpts from the Mother House Annals of 1939 paint a picture of another drought and give insight into how Nazareth's residents coped with such hardships. Accounts like these can be found repeatedly throughout the decades of Mother House Annals. It was droughts such as these that repeatedly impressed upon the sisters the need for a larger and more reliable water supply. So these go in chronological order. We start on September 10th, 1939. The awful drought, with a TH, still continues. Reports of cattle dying in many counties, all through the state. Water is being hauled for the cattle. October 14th, continued drought and continued cool spell. Work goes on. October 20th, because of the low water supply, there is to be no bathing in tubs until further notice. November 28th, there has been no rain for the past 2 weeks. The litany of the holy name is being said 3 times daily at adoration, dinner prayers, and beads. Proposals were made to alleviate the routine water shortage at Nazareth. In December of 1920, bids for cleaning out the lake, Nazareth Lake, aka the Mud Lake, were rejected for being too expensive. 3 bids were made in January of 1921 by Messrs. Wilson and Woodward to construct a dam for a new lake, but these bids were also rejected. In April 1921, a bid by a Mr. Bickle was presented by Mr. C.A. Curtin, architect. This bid for a new dam was accepted, and later that year, work was completed on the Immaculate Conception Lake Dam. Which you can see up here. I imagine many of you have been out or at least seen photos of our statue with the lady in the lake. That is this lake, and the original dam, you can see the spillway there in the middle. Sorry. And there's a gentleman up there walking. Maybe that's Mr. C.A. Curtin, I don't know. This is the most fun story I have about this whole presentation. To honor the Blessed Mother, a 2,500-pound Carrara marble statue of Our Lady was commissioned, and a pedestal was built to water height in the middle of the lake. Our Lady's statue arrived at Nazareth in March 1922. Unfortunately, the lake had filled much faster than expected, and now the sisters faced the dilemma of how to move a 2,500-pound statue to a pedestal in the middle of a lake. Mr. Curtin once again saved the day, designing a zip line for the Blessed Mother statue to swing across, which Curtin's superintendent, Mr. Robinson, agreed to attempt. A 6-foot-tall log was placed in the ground on one side of the lake, and a cable was stretched from the top of the log to a point high in a hickory tree on the opposite bank. 3 times, Our Lady swung out over the lake, wrapped in comforters for protection. The first 2 times, she made it to the pedestal, but was too low. After the second attempt failed, Sister Emiliana Murray wrote in her diary of the dam, "To shore again, dear lady, and now it is the 13th of August, and we had planned the uncovering on the 15th, Our Lady's Day. The night of the 13th, the men went into the woods and searched diligently for a taller, stronger tree which could swing the cable higher and bring the statue up to the proper level. They finished this task that night, and early the next morning, Our Lady made the 3rd trip, and before the adoration bell rang out, she was on the pedestal. From the bridge over the spillway, I watched her and gave directions as to her position." Now, when I wrote this history, the actual full-length history, I asked Sister Evie, when did the adoration bell ring out? Because people are going to ask me. So for all of you wondering when that happened, it was at 9:40 a.m. Sister Emiliana's words are recorded in the Diary of the Dam of Immaculate Conception Lake, or when I did my research, I affectionately referred to as the Dam Diary. With the statue in place, the Immaculate Conception Lake was placed on August 15th, 1922. Father Richard Davis, Nazareth chaplain, blessed the statue and the lake, giving an address from a boat decorated for the occasion. He's right up there. Many clergy, SCNs, and lay people, as you can see in the other two images behind me, were present for the blessing of this life-sustaining addition to Nazareth's campus. So you can see some of them up there on the dam, and then they wrapped around to the banks, all those white caps. As we've seen from the excerpts in the annals, which actually were from the 30s and not 1922 or before, even the addition of this beautiful lake was not sufficient to protect Nazareth from the future droughts. By September 1936, Nazareth was adding a third lake to the property. Above the old lake, Mud Lake, nearly due east, a dam which was to be 150 feet long and 15 feet high was under construction. It was, quote, sufficiently wide for a truck to pass over with ease. The lake formed by this new dam, Nazareth's third lake, was named St. Joseph Lake and had a capacity of 9 million gallons. So that is why, if you remember when I talked about Nazareth Lake, or the first lake, it later gained the name Lower St. Joseph. So this is Upper St. Joseph, and the old lake gained the name Lower St. Joseph as they were right next to each other. Soon after this lake was completed, tragedy struck in the form of the Great Flood. The combination of a too-high spillway and the unprecedented amount of rain caused the new dam of St. Joseph Lake to burst. A 6-foot-wide section of the dam collapsed. Water surged from the break for hours, the roar so loud that it was heard as far away as the girls' infirmary in the Academy building, O'Connell Hall. And for those who don't know, at that time the infirmary was located over where Sister Louise's apartment was, on the second floor of O'Connell Hall near Old Archives. So you could hear the roar from the dam all the way over there and inside. Miraculously, Nazareth's buildings and people escaped damage from the rushing waters of St. Joseph Lake because the water flowed into Froman Creek. The dam was repaired a few months later in July 1937. The pictures up on the screen are from 2019. You might have noticed the quality shift there because we don't have any old pictures of that one. One more lake. Just kidding, there's two. A 1941 project cleaned out and enlarged Immaculate Conception Lake and added the fourth major lake to Nazareth's property. On October 13th, work was completed to build an earthen dam, quote, across about 200 feet east of Our Lady of Grace statue. The new lake this dam created was originally known as Upper Immaculate Conception Lake, though it was also referred to as the Storage Lake and the Back Lake. Later, it became known as SCN Lake, and sometime after the completion of SCN Center in 1969, the name SCN Center Lake entered the vernacular. So you can see SCN Center. This is roughly 1970, this photo. You can see those cars out front. This feature is no longer there either. But you can see the beautiful lake, and then at one point when it was expanded, this is the lake bed itself, and you can see a car parked out there. And then these are current views of SCN Center Lake and the SCN Center Lake Dam. This is the fifth and final lake at Nazareth. On September 29th, 1941, Sister Emiliana Murray was authorized to spend an additional $2,000 to clean and enlarge Immaculate Conception Lake and to build a dam in the ravine above the silo, creating a lake for Nazareth's Holstein herd to supplement the numerous watering holes spread across the farm. The project to build the dam in the ravine was delayed. You can tell that Sister Emiliana Murray was a bit exasperated when she recorded that the dam was expected to be constructed by Nazareth's farmhands, but that they had failed to find the time in 2 years to do so. When a man was eventually hired to build the dam, A lack of supplies due to so many things being diverted for the war effort further delayed this project because, of course, the early 1940s were in World War II. The dam in the ravine was finally completed in 1944, forming what we know today as Roadside Lake. So just a couple of photos of Roadside Lake, and in this one you can see the spillway there in that corner. Sister Emiliana recorded in her treasurer's notebook, quote, "As someone remarked, you have not seen anything until you see the Great Lakes." She was referring to Nazareth and not the ones we know of today. By 1959, Nazareth's water supply included Peter's Puddle, 2 springs, multiple wells and cisterns, the reservoir, steam heat, a sewage disposal plant, a water filtration plant, the 4 main lakes, Roadside Lake for the cattle, several ponds across the farm, a Skinner irrigation system, which was added in 1944, a new fire protection system that had been added in 1954, and a replacement water tower that was added in 1959. This is the promised overhead photo that Carolyn asked about. We've got Estienne Center Lake and Immaculate Conception Lake. You can see Our Lady right there. This is Roadside over here. And then to the far right, Upper and Lower St. Joseph Lake. So this is Nazareth's first lake. And then here's Center Campus right there. The year 1977 was one of great change for Nazareth. On June 27, 1977, over 424 acres of Nazareth farmland, which included both Upper and Lower St. Joseph Lakes, was sold to Dr. Eli George, along with Nazareth's dairy operation. Many sisters, including Sister Emiliana Cryan, expressed serious apprehension over the decision to include 2 of the community's lakes in the sale. Sister Emiliana expressed her concern in a letter to Superior General, Sister Barbara Thomas. At the time of our board meeting, it did not occur to me that 2 of our lakes were included within the land outlined for sale. This fact disturbs me greatly, as I know we assured HUD, the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development, that we would have sufficient water for the residents of Nazareth Village. And if we have 2 lakes less than at the time of our commitment to them, are we going to be able to live up to it? Also, where will we get the water for our campus needs? And that is a photo of some of the farm buildings, which are across that little bridge where you go over to the mechanic shop and the Red Barn. The concerns of Sister Emiliana Cryan and others were in many ways alleviated the following year. On April 4th, 1978, a contract was signed to purchase water from the city of Bardstown. New pipes were laid to connect the campus to the city water supply. It was several months before work began to make the switch to city water a reality, but on September 28, 1978, the connection with the Bardstown water system was completed, thus ending Nazareth's 156-year reliance on the increasingly intricate system of springs, wells, cisterns, reservoirs, ponds, lakes, water tower, and filter plant. The water on campus was held in reserve in case of fire. Despite the switch to city water, Nazareth, along with the entire city of Bardstown, again faced a water shortage in February 1981. The city ordered all city water customers to reduce water usage by 30%. With their years of experience with water shortage, the sisters reduced their water usage by 32% in the first week of mandated conservation. Up there on the screen is just a record from the annals talking about the contract being awarded and work begun to install a water line for water from the city of Bardstown. And this water tower, I'm sure you all recognize, replaced one that was built earlier or was repainted, I'm not entirely sure, but that was actually added by HUD to support the villages. The day after the farm was sold, Sister Thekla Keller proposed that Peter's Puddle be developed as a recreational swimming area. By 1979, Peter's Puddle was made safe and welcoming for recreational swimming, according to Sister Thekla's proposal. Sand was brought to form a beach on the eastern bank of the pond, a floating dock was secured in the middle of the water, and a diving board was placed on the retaining wall. Right over there. Passes for swimming in Peter's Puddle were given to those permitted to swim to ensure the area stayed private. By 1988, the upkeep required for Peter's Puddle to be utilized as a swimming area had become excessive. A previous decision by the Nazareth Campus Service Board meant that sand was no longer being purchased to replace that washed away from the beach. Problems such as algae buildup in the water and the numerous reptiles, amphibians, and other species of wildlife that have taken up residence in or around the area made the pond somewhat hazardous for swimmers. Ask Patsy O'Toole and Sharon Cecil about the last time they swam in Peter's Puddle. At the recommendation of an attorney, the diving board and ladders had been removed at the end of the 1985 season. Liability for injury was a pressing concern, as an accident at Peter's Puddle, while likely to be covered by existing insurance, could jeopardize future insurance coverage for the entire congregation. While Peter's Puddle was no longer an official swimming area on the Nazareth property, some sisters and associates continued to enjoy swimming there years after the decision was made that Peter's Puddle no longer be a swimming area. I think some of you have recognized this dear sister up here, and I believe I saw her in the room. That is Sister Rita Davis, swimming in Peter's Puddle. When St. Vincent de Paul Church was expanded in the early 1920s, it was built over that original spring that sustained Nazareth in its earliest days. The spring could be accessed from the church basement and was there for years. However, in the year 2000, 1 year after air conditioning was installed in St. Vincent Church, that's right, 2000 is when they got air conditioning in that church. Engineers were brought to campus to inspect the effects of the underground spring in the church basement. Concern for the wooden underpinnings and humidity levels in the basement resulted in recommendations to reroute the spring so that it flowed not into the church basement, but into the creek behind the laundry building. Other recommendations included filling in the spring's pool with rock and concrete and establishing an emergency drainage system in the basement. In an effort to preserve the integrity of the church, all 3 recommendations were carried out, and all the work was completed by October 2000. Whoa. Apparently I skipped a slide. So this is part of that stone structure you may have noticed on the outside of the church. That was built over the spring to allow light and ventilation in there. And then these railings mark the borders of the spring that was under the church. And I took that photo in, I think, 2019, so those are still there. You've never seen this slide before. I don't know what you're talking about. In 2019, the water tower built at Nazareth in 1959, which had been utilized in the connection to the city water supply, was no longer necessary. New pipes were laid to connect Nazareth directly to the city water supply, and the water tower was removed from the system. It hung around for a few years. There was a bit of a discussion about what to do with it, keep it, leave it. On September 6, 2021, the water tower was knocked down and taken away in pieces. I believe there's still video of that online if you want to see it. My 7-year-old thinks it's great. Over the course of 200 years, the Sisters of Charity of Nazareth have added cisterns, wells, water towers, a reservoir, dams, ponds, and 5 lakes to the Nazareth property. Creeks and natural springs have been rerouted, dams have broken and been repaired. Miles of pipes were placed to carry water to the heart of campus. In times of drought, water was carried to campus via rail car and pipes laid to neighboring lakes. As the community and school grew, the sisters adapted the landscape to ensure life-giving water could be offered to all those who lived at and visited Nazareth. In the first days that the sisters occupied the land now known as Nazareth, the natural springs sustained them. Today, the SCNs and their associates repay the favor through efforts towards ecological sustainability and reestablishing habitat for wildlife, working to sustain the water systems and all the creatures that rely on them. Are there any questions? Michael, would you get Sister Susan there? Sister Susan has asked how deep the lakes are. That is an excellent question. I don't know exactly. Immaculate Conception Lake and SCN Center Lake are the deepest. Because they were expanded and enlarged multiple times, it's hard to get an exact amount. I know at one point each of them was 30 feet deep, and it's possible they were enlarged after that. Roadside Lake is quite a bit shallower. Anyone else? I know you all are burning with questions. Everybody else wants to hear them too, I promise. Every time we do this, everybody asks me questions once I'm down there. How many people have been out to Immaculate Conception Lake? About half. That's pretty good. If you are able, I encourage you to do so. It's gorgeous. All right. Well, if there are no other questions, then thank you all for coming. We'll be doing another one in about 3 months, so stay tuned.